Episode 1 of Zero Day begins with former President George Mullen alone in his office, his mind working overtime as he struggles to recall the safe's code. Outside, flashing lights and ominous sounds hint that his house is under attack. Just as he cracks open the safe, the door is kicked in, and we're thrown back 3 days. We're in Hudson, New York. George wakes up, pops a couple of pills and takes a swim before going for a run with his dog. On his way back, he notices that the bird feeder is nearly empty, a puzzle he shares with his house manager Hector, wondering if he forgot to refill it or if some mischievous animal got to it first. Later, George meets with Anna, a ghostwriter sent over by a publishing house, to help him with his memoirs. His office is housed in a nearby cottage, and neat rows of labeled notebooks line the shelves. George tells Anna that his meticulous note-taking habit dates back to law school. It helps him sift through memories and spot key details. Anna remarks that with all this record-keeping, it should be easy to write his memoirs. She reminds him that as the last president to rally true bipartisan support, his story could be a real game-changer. Their conversation shifts to a cherished photo of George's childhood friend John Flanagan, an army buddy who survived 2 tours but met a tragic end back home while picking up a carton of milk. His death propelled George into the world of prosecution. When Anna probes why George never ran for re-election, he replies that he was too busy burying his son. Anna hints that there were different reasons, but George shuts down completely, telling Anna that he's aware that he owes her boss a book draft, and it's coming soon, but she should leave. In the car, Anna updates her boss, convinced Mullen will never finish the book. All of a sudden, the GPS fails, Anna's phone signal vanishes, and the screen flashes a chilling message: "This will happen again." Moments later, a train crashes into her car, causing a fiery explosion. Cut to the Mullen residence. Armed Secret Service agents alert George that something monumental has just occurred. CNN reports widespread power grid outages and a total hijacking of computer systems controlling transportation and communications. It only lasted a minute or two, but it was enough to cause chaos in the transportation and health systems, which resulted in massive casualties. And every phone in America displayed that eerie message: "This will happen again." Over in New York City's Russian consulate, a shadowy man briefs his superior about the unfolding crisis. With a cold promise to take care of them, he grabs a weapon and leaves. Meanwhile, in Washington, House Speaker Richard Dreyer warns that the nation's complacency has left it vulnerable, calling for a wake-up call that cuts across party lines. Back in New York, Sheila Mullen arrives home and finds George glued to the news, disturbed by a constant buzzing in his ears. She assures him that their daughter is safe, busy with a special session in Congress. They speculate about the possible Russian involvement in the attack, and George hopes President Mitchell has a grip on what's happening. The next day, George's morning routine is the same. He wakes up, takes his pills, goes for his swim and run, and again finds the bird feeder empty. His dog barks at something unseen in the woods, leaving us to wonder if someone or something is watching. Meanwhile, memorials spring up nationwide as the tragedy is officially dubbed Zero Day. A classified briefing for former presidents reveals that authorities are as baffled as the public. Soon after, Roger Carlson, a trusted associate, arrives at George's house. He says the White House has requested that George visit rescue sites and meet with first responders. Reluctantly, he agrees. At a chaotic Manhattan crash site, tensions rise as conspiracy theories spread. George steps in, reminding the crowd that division is exactly what the attackers want. His impassioned speech wins applause, but his daughter, Congresswoman Alex Mullen, isn't impressed. She calls Roger, furious that her father is being pulled back into politics. Elsewhere, the Russian consulate operative searches for a hacker named Felix, suspected of running a powerful server farm. A shady informant reveals that Felix has a history of vanishing and resurfacing after he relocates his server farm. He promises to track him down. Back home, George tells Sheila that President Mitchell wants him in DC. But first, if you're enjoying this recap, please remember to subscribe to our channel. That really helps us a lot. Back home, George tells Sheila that President Mitchell wants him in DC, but promises he'll return in time for the party they organized to celebrate her confirmation as a federal judge. Sheila warns him not to underestimate Mitchell. If she's calling, she has an angle. And Sheila's right. Mitchell tells George the attack was unprecedented. No ransom, no claims of responsibility, just a massive digital breach. So Congress has authorized the creation of a special investigative commission with sweeping powers, including surveillance, search and seizure, and even suspending habeas corpus if necessary. Mitchell wants George to lead this commission. Before leaving DC, George meets with Jeremy, his CIA contact, who warns that another attack could collapse American society within days. Mullen wants to know what information the CIA has, so Jeremy briefs him in a secure room. Whatever he learns shakes him. He comes out of the meeting with his ears ringing and immediately arranges a clandestine encounter with a spy using a coded message through a dry cleaner. Then Roger hands him a brand new notebook, and George opens it and begins writing down his thoughts. Back at the Russian consulate, the man we saw before receives a message with Felix's location and starts shredding files at once. months. At the Mullins party in Hudson, Alex is livid at the prospect of her father heading the commission. She warns him that the crisis is being weaponized, and she's afraid George is being set up as a scapegoat for authoritarian overreach. Just then, Roger announces the arrival of someone named Natan. It turns out that the mysterious phone call to the dry cleaners has summoned an old acquaintance of George's, who appears to be a former Mossad operative. Natan tells him that Russia has been funneling money to a group of New York hackers to finance covert operations and stir up Kremlin-style chaos. Their leader is a guy named Felix, and has been linked to a mysterious high-powered server farm in the Bronx. Before leaving, Natan ominously hints that he won't always be able to take George's calls. They shake hands, acknowledging the gravity of what's unfolding. Meanwhile, Alex gets a cryptic message from an unknown contact, but before she can respond, Roger interrupts. Their exchange grows heated as she accuses him of shady financial dealings linked to insider knowledge of the attack. She worries the country has changed so much since her father's presidency that stepping back into the spotlight will destroy him. George heads back to the party, as Who Killed Bambi by the Sex Pistols plays faintly in the background. The ringing in his ears returns, and he tells a puzzled Hector to change the music, but the song cuts out on its own, making us wonder if it was all in his head. When the party's over, George and Sheila discuss President Mitchell's offer. Sheila believes it's a trap, but one that George must step into, if only to ensure that no one else gets to pull the trigger. Later that night, George is jolted awake by a call from Natan, who delivers earth-shaking news and urges him to write it down. As George feverishly takes notes, the ringing in his ears intensifies, drowning out Natan's words. When the call ends, he locks his notebook in the safe. The next day, George publicly accepts his appointment to the Zero-Day Commission, vowing to bring the culprits to justice. In a strange, fleeting moment during his speech, he imagines Anna, the ghostwriter, standing among the reporters. But of course, she isn't really there. Cut to the Zero-Day Commission headquarters being set up, as news anchors praise Mullen, a fearless prosecutor whose sterling reputation only grew over his 4-year term. Most agree he's the right choice to lead the commission and uncover the truth before America is attacked again. Back in Hudson, as George prepares to leave, he gets another call from Natan, who confirms that everything he shared the previous night is true, and that's the key to it all. Strange background noises cut the call short, and George orders Roger and the Secret Service to wait as he rushes to his office. And now we return to the opening scene of the episode. George is desperately trying to recall the safe's code so he can retrieve his precious notebook filled with crucial notes from Natan's call. In his haste, he knocks over a framed photo of John Flanagan. Outside, a Secret Service agent grows increasingly anxious as George ignores his knocks. The agent declares a code red, and with his team, begins breaking down the door. Inside, George finally cracks the safe and pulls out the notebook, only to find that its pages are filled with gibberish. The phrases "Who killed Bambi" and "Bambi is dead" are repeated over and over like the frantic ramblings of a madman. When the agents burst in, they find George unhurt but visibly shaken as he insists that someone broke into his safe and swapped his notebook. They watch as he storms off toward the main residence, with Roger trailing behind. In the kitchen, George confronts an unfamiliar house manager, demanding to know who was in his office and where Hector is. Sheila soon steps in to calm him down, gently reminding him that Hector retired 5 years ago, a fact that leaves George utterly floored. And that's it for episode 1 of Zero Day. Please remember to subscribe, and stay tuned for the next recap of another new wonderful show.